That's not good. 6. There we go. Okay. So audio should be good now. Okay. So let me take this. All right, Lou, we're live.
Are we?
Yep. Let me just get a quick audio check on here. Aaron Miller says he has sound.
You can hear us?
Oh, he can hear us?
Excellent.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Aaron. So should I just...
You're good to go, man.
Go? Okay, all right. Cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm just going to paint a dragon a little bit. Work on this one. This was a demo I started for the illustration boot camp that we do every year. And I've been meaning to finish it for a year. Finally get the time to do it. Try to get as far as I can on this one tonight. I don't know if I'll finish it, but... If you guys have questions, you know, fire away. We'll do my best to answer each of them. Tom's with us to help moderate. And
hello.
thank you, Tom.
Hey guys, just a heads up. We're actually still having some audio problems a little bit. I switched to camera audio for right now. I'm not sure what's going on with the microphones. It wasn't working, so.
Oh, that's that delay, yeah. So this one started as a demo for the boot camp illustration, and before the demo, I sketched out some different dragon poses I wanted. It wasn't meant to be anything like super illustrative or anything like that. It was just kind of a quick demo on how I paint dragons, and I was mainly just trying to give something, you know, fun and informative for the students, and but it turned out to be something kind of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I picked a color palette. I have my iPad up, and I have a color palette I found online that I'm kind of referencing, and for this landscape, and that kind of helped dictate a lot of what the colors going into the dragon would be. And I'm kind of just pecking around a bit. See what happens tonight. Hopefully some good stuff. But a lot of you guys have already seen, those of you who are members have seen the dragon video. I've talked a lot about my process from start to finish. You know, starting with the thumbnails and working my way up to sketches and getting approvals and doing finished sketches and gathering references and things like that, and then the process of the whole finished painting. So we're kind of jumping right into the more finished level of stuff, and at this point for me, I have some references, but I'm kind of also just moving stuff around, trying to feel it out. This one is not an assignment for anything in particular, so I can be a little bit more carefree with it. I'm still, you know, very, you know, I'm concentrating on everything, but I can be a little bit more sketchy with it, if you will, experimental with it. There's no deadline on this one, so I can kind of just get in and have some fun, start mixing some colors and You know, a lot of these colors I wouldn't necessarily try out in an illustration for a job, just because they're not really safe. But you know, if I'm feeling confident with the painting, I guess I will sometimes. But it's kind of, a lot of it's planned out ahead of time, and I kind of, you know, a little color comp, I'll send the art director to get that approved. But for the most part, with this one, I'm just gonna wing it.
So Eric Draws has a question here. He says, "Hi Lucas, I want to draw dragons from imagination. What are some tips that will help make the process faster?"
Well, that's a good question. I definitely gather reference, you know, of various animals. There's a lot of different animals going on in this. It kind of depends too on the style of dragon you really want to go into. I tend to treat my dragons a lot like dinosaurs. You know, they maybe could have existed, not as whimsical. You know, like they don't talk or things like that. So I try to keep them a little more grounded, and I do that by gathering reference of live animals, turtles, alligators, bat wings, various types of lizards, anything that has texture. I mean, I found myself shooting the ground, finding reference. I was just shooting the ground because the ground had some cool, craggly shapes in it I thought would maybe work good for a texture in a dragon. That's kind of the beauty of doing a dragon, is that it's mythological. So you don't have to worry about it being, you know, there's no real like right or wrong answer for it. So you can have a little bit of fun and experiment with it. A lot of what I look for too is not just, I mean, I want the design of the dragon to be cool too, but overall I want the painting. I want it to be a good image. I want it to be something that is inspiring and fun to look at. It brings people in. And a lot of that's the colors, the composition, you know, how I balance out my light and dark patterns. So there's a lot of the forethought that kind of goes into that stuff. And as I'm painting, those are the kind of things that are running through the back of my head. You know, well, maybe I need a little bit more of a purple in here to help kind of balance out a little bit more of the green purples, or to get that illusion of brown without pushing brown in there. You know, adding those complementary colors. Going a little darker here because I need that form to read a little bit more dimensional. You know, drawing errors, certain proportional issues, or you know, certainly like I was just before we got on here, I started beefing up the arms a little bit because I want those to feel heavy enough, you know, bulky enough that they could feel like they could lift this dragon. Imagine the dragon's very heavy, so you want some muscle behind some of the anatomy. I have a huge file of reference folder, a folder labeled dragon, and it's got all sorts of different photos I've found online, photos I've taken, movie stills that I use to help kind of give me any kind of leg up as I'm doing my drawing and my painting, whether it's color references or most of the time it's like textures and shapes, but maybe there's a certain color palette. I have another folder actually for color too. This whole background's based off of a color from a landscape. And a train's going by, so just a second. I'll get some of these volumes, maybe some more neck muscles in here. Get that to kind of, it's just a little too bland in this area. So if I get in here and figure out maybe just a couple of neck muscles, borrowing from a little bit of animal anatomy, and see if I can get that to look somewhat a little bit more representational, a little more form to it.
So Eric asks again, do you ever listen to instrumental music when you paint? Classical or movie soundtracks to help you imagine dragons?
Totally. Yeah, that's actually I have a playlist on my iPod of epic soundtrack music, and it's like dozens and dozens of different soundtracks, and and it's pretty inspirational. It gets me kind of in mood. Or I also listen to audiobooks. Sometimes that helps too, as far as just kind of passing the time, if you will. I like to listen to audiobooks because I love reading, and I just don't have no time for it. So it's a chance to do some reading in a way. Get those books I really like to listen to or read. But yeah, that instrumental music is probably my next go-to playlist.
All right, my follow-up question: audiobook that you're listening to right now. You got one?
I just finished The Radiance of Light by Bernard, what's his name? Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson. Really good. I love his work. I think you do too, Tom. I think
I do.
So I just finished that one. I've been meaning to read it for a long time. I know it came out maybe a year or two ago. And I finished The Way of Kings, oh man, that was a few years back. So I've been waiting. When it came out, I didn't read it right away because I was into something else. But and then so I just finished that, and then I just restarted the Mistborn trilogy again.
Nice.
So I want to get this neck to roll. If I can give it any kind of dimension, you'll notice I'm kind of pushing my brush strokes around to try and get a little bit more of that volumetric influence. So for me, oftentimes, there's no reference of this dragon. I've got to piece together a lot of information. So for me, a lot of times it's playing around with the shapes, gathering different references, and just moving stuff around until I feel like it's right, until I feel like it looks good. It's got an appealing design, and it works well enough. Because it's for me, it's not going to be exact, and it's one of those things that just kind of make the coolest looking image you can, even if it's not correct.
So Greg Schwartz has a question. He asks, how many hours have you worked on the dragon, and how will you decide when it's done?
I don't know. When it's done, you just kind of come to the point where it's like, well, I don't know how to make anything else better than I've got it for where I'm at. But this dragon, I don't know, maybe. Well, there's not a whole lot of hours into this one. It might look that way. Some of this stuff is dry. I did this stuff a while back, but it was. It's more illusion. I don't know if you can zoom in or not, but there's a lot of real loose indication. From far away, it looks a little bit more finished. But I'll probably get in there and maybe do a little bit more work to kind of clear some of this up. But I don't know. All in all, maybe 5 or 6 hours. It's pretty loose, and that's not including the sketch or anything like that. But that was only another. Once I got the thumbnail down, which took maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and then another hour. Keep in mind that if it was an illustration for a job, there'd be a lot more time that goes into planning it out. But because it was a demo, I just wanted to get something up on the board pretty quick, and something that'd be kind of fun for the students to watch.
So Tommy has a question. He says, "Hey Lucas, when you were a student, did you often have to force yourself to finish illustrations, knowing that it might not meet your expectations?"
Yes, that's a good question, and that's one thing I see with a lot of students, especially new students, is they have a tough time finishing stuff. And I think it's crucial to take it as far as you can for the skill level you're at, because you need to know what it feels like to call an illustration done. Yeah, it's just to be able to see it. And yeah, that particular piece is probably not going to be in your portfolio 6 months from then, but you need to go through that motion to be able to get to those ones that will be in your portfolio for the long run, or at least for the job hunting. That's a good question, because I've seen a lot of artists come through who are good, well skilled, but they don't finish anything, and they just never go on to do work, and it's just a shame, because a lot of them have real good skill. So for me, yeah, I've got some old illustration pieces, and maybe someday I'll put them up just so some of the students can see some of the newer or the older the stuff that kind of got me entry level work. Keep in mind, if I was to show that portfolio now to a client, there's no way I'd get hired. The standards are just so much higher now, and there's so many good artists out there that directors have just got good artists are a dime a dozen now, and it's crazy how good people are getting from all over the world.
So Ryan David Robinson has a question. He says, "Hi Lucas, are you currently working with bristles, sable, or synthetic brushes right now? Also, what's your favorite workhorse brush?"
I use right now. I have a bunch of these mongoose hair ones that I'm just I'm trying to go through, and then I'll probably move on to synthetic ones. So right now this is the Langnickel. I don't even know if they make these anymore. But yeah, I think they stopped making them just because the endangered mongoose. So I'm gonna stop using these as soon as I run out of my stock. And then I use also these synthetic Robert Simmons brushes. These are the white sable brushes. I use these for like some detail work. This one is a smaller one for the Langnickels. I have some larger size ones too, and I also have some of these silver white brushes. These are decent. I kind of like these. They don't last very long. I can maybe get through a painting or two with these, but after that, I don't know. Maybe it's just my own fault for not taking as good a care of brushes as I should. But yeah, it's something. Usually the brushes I like, they tend not to last very long. And same with these Langnickels. And it could just be also my style of painting. I'm a little bit more rough with them at times, and so they tend not to last quite as long. But they get good results, and that's what I'm looking for. It kind of sucks. I got to pay more to stock up, but in the end, it gives me the results I need. And I probably should start exploring more since these Langnickels are gone. I should start finding one that works for me now. Yeah, I have yet to do that. And then I also use the Robert Simmons Signette brushes, the bristle brushes, and that's kind of like my beat up brush. Those things will last a while. They're usually what I use to get paint up on the surface, and then I use these sable brushes to manipulate the paint, get the edges and the shapes and the quality I want. Kind of felt like these darks up here were too dark for the kind of feel I want to go in the painting. So I'm just kind of lightening them up. A little bit of a glaze over the darks. Just lightening up the value a little bit and going a little bit grayer with the color is going to help this this dragon to feel a little bit larger and kind of push him back a little bit further, which is kind of what I want. I don't want it to be too atmospheric, but like I'm saving some of the atmosphere down here in the tail and back here, so we can get a little bit more depth going that way. But I'll add some foreground elements, like maybe his wing. It'll probably get a little bit darker here and then gradually gradate back a little bit further, just to kind of get that wing to kind of do something more like that as it drops back, and then getting more depth out of there. and then pushing the whole range of value there.
So we got a question about the dragon design. What inspired the design decision for the spikes on this dragon?
Oh man, that's a good question. I've got a bearded dragon at home. I think probably that helped a little bit. But a lot of it, I try to look for kind of just interesting, bigger shapes. Something that creates an interesting silhouette. Like in this one, if you kind of follow my brush, it kind of goes up, it runs across, it hits this point, it runs this way. And the big shape is this kind of like a rhomboid-like shape. And then I kind of cut into it a little bit here, and then cut out some shapes out of that. So I think about the bigger shape first, and then I kind of work my way into the details. And then I wanted something a little bit more menacing, so obviously spikes are always good.
And do you have a specific palette that you're working with for this piece?
It's pretty much my normal palette. I have a palette I'm pretty comfortable with that I like, and so I'm using pretty much a warm and cool primary with a couple of convenient colors. I can go through it really quick if you want me to.
Go for it.
Go for it? Okay. Titanium white, cad lemon, cad yellow, yellow ochre, cad red, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, manganese blue is my warm blue, my cool blue is ultramarine, my warm green is sap green, and then I have permanent green on there, and also my cool green is a viridian. And that's it. Sometimes I have black on there, sometimes I'll throw in like a cad orange, and I also sometimes use a turquoise, phthalo turquoise. But that's usually it, and every once in a while I feel kind of like I need to experiment with something, and I'll put out a new color just to try out, but more often than not I come back to this palette, or just these colors. For me, this is the fun part. You gotta get in and you start just moving things around, and I don't know exactly what's gonna happen all the time. So when something does happen and it works, it's like, wow, that's kind of cool. I'm just gonna go with that. Sometimes I'm relying on, this is obviously an invented pose on this dragon and invented lighting. So sometimes you kind of have to break it down in your head, some of the simpler forms or some of the simpler shapes you remember from drawing from life, some of the anatomy. So you get in and you start to round out some shapes, or establish something that looks kind of anatomically accurate. Sometimes it is totally accurate. I don't know that I don't know, Tom would know this, but I don't think lizards really have traps, but
Traps?
yeah, trapeziuses.
Technically, yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
He's got kind of humanoid traps, I think, but kind of a humanoid collarbone. It's just, this kind of stuff is something for the audience to relate to, and a way for me to push some anatomy into some interesting spots that make it kind of somewhat believable, I guess. Tom might be shaking his head. No.
No, I'm giving you a thumbs up here.
Are you? Okay, cool.
Not really. In my heart, I am.
Oh, thanks, Tom. For those of you who don't know, Tom is like master animal anatomy, just animal everything, huh? Pretty much.
So here's a question. What types of canvas are best for painting in oil? I guess a follow-up that I kind of throw on there is, what do you well, maybe answer like what do you use for illustration, and what would you recommend for maybe portrait studies or
light
something
study.
along those lines?
I use, so what I mainly use gesso masonite. It's sanded down relatively smooth. There's still a little bit of tooth to it because I do like that grit that happens, and the paint just sticks to it a little bit easier. But yeah, it's mainly gesso masonite. I use Liquitex Basics gesso, and for portrait work, I like to use linen. Like if I'm doing like a quick gesture study, like a 2-hour or 3-hour painting, then I will use a panel or something like that. I really like the Source Tech ones. Those are really nice. I've got a primed, I think it's number 13 primed Clausen's is like the canvas they're using, and I really like that. It's one of my favorite. A little expensive, but it's a great surface. I took a workshop with Jeremy Lipking one time, and I think he was using them, so I thought I'd try them out, and man, loved it. I don't know if he still uses them, but. I was getting some of the subtlety that I'm wanting. I want some more texture in there, but not like, this is maybe a little too much. I might have some of that in certain areas, but like overall this is starting to kind of get some of those volumes to read a little bit, and then the range and edges I like a little bit better. Yeah, that train runs late. Crazy. Kind of an overcast day, so in this painting, so or there's just some good cloud cover. So I'm not like there's not gonna be a really harsh lighting scheme. So again, a lot of lighting's invented, but I just need areas where it's somewhat believable. I can get some of the volumes to read, and the relative color palette. I want that to work. Warm light on this far side wing as well. So maybe a little bit of a rim light. I'll change that color up a little bit too as I go. Maybe a little warmer in the middle, that shape. A little more ruddy as it moves up and down the wing. A little bit lighter too, actually. Maybe I'll pick a little bit up on this side as well. And if the light's hitting on that far side of the wing, I might need to add some kind of richer warms in here as well. Maybe at least in a smaller spot. I'll just try to get a little whirl here. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, but we'll see. Be lighter. And normally I'd get like some kind of reference for something like this. Kind of doing this on the fly here, but using my finger to kind of light or darken it back up and kind of push it back into that blue a little bit. We'll see. I'll play with that area. I think I probably have to go and find some reference to maybe get that area to look a little bit more believable.
So Lou, did you do a lot of comps before you came up with this layout, or did you just kind of jump into it with this?
This one I kind of jumped into. Yeah, I had like maybe 3 sketches I did, and this was the most successful of them. So I kind of just went with it. But like I said before, if it was for a job, no way. I would definitely spend more time in the land and make sure that was all good. Try to work out as many kinks as I can at that phase. Forms are starting to read better in that area, so I'm fairly happy with that. I think I still want to get in there and try to get that wing to work a little bit better. It needs to lighten up a touch. So I've got an illustration course launching. I don't know when is that launching, do you know?
That'll be going up next week.
Next week,
I want
okay.
to say, yeah.
So 2 videos this month, which is awesome. You get the facial feature class launching, and then the fantasy illustration. So it's pretty much that course is kind of, it was my take on how I would do my magic work, more or less. I just use that to pretty much walk you through my entire process from getting the assignment. I even go into a little bit about portfolio building and getting your job and how to get work, things like that. But I walk you through the entire process in a painting as well, from thumbnails to sketches, and then to finish. I don't quite finish the painting in the video. It's just too much. It would be way too many hours. But there's definitely areas of it that get finished. So any of you who desire to work with magic or do any kind of fantasy illustration, I think that would be a good course for you to check out. trying to keep these edges pretty soft around the light areas. Helps kind of give you that glowing effect. Because this area's all dry, I'm going to have to kind of repaint it.
So here's a question. Tommy says, "Hey Lucas, I'm looking to get into illustration. Do you think it would be useful to copy the illustration you did for the online class, or should I do my own to start with?"
That is a good question. I would recommend doing your own. I mean, use the principles that I teach in that course, but try to make it your own. I mean, copying somebody who's established is always, it's a good learning tool, but it's not something I would put in a portfolio or anything like that. That could be, plagiarism a little bit, so you want to stay away from that. But yeah, if you want to kind of take the lesson and make it, apply that to something that you want to do, I think that's that's kind of how the course is designed. Is how you're kind of meant to study from it. Is take the information and then make your own work with it. I think I want that wing, back of that wing there, because that blue it's starting to come forward. Oops, I want to lighten that up though. I don't mind the blue, but I don't mind it kind of cooling off as it drops back, but maybe it just needs to be a little bit lighter. And then that'll help it kind of go back in space a little bit better. So just remember, your softer edges recede, your grayer colors, the less contrast you'll get as you drop back. There's some things you'll see in atmospheric perspective. A little more contrast in here. Get that kind of shiny look that a lot of reptiles tend to get.
So here's a question from Eric. How large do you generally work for your illustration assignments?
They kind of range within a range, like a size range. So like 11 by 14 is usually about the smallest I will go, and then I'll go up to like maybe 18 by 24. That's a general size. This right here is 16 by 20, and I'd say this is I usually work within those ranges. And then those of you who have seen the other video, I've also done, well, I haven't finished it, but a big dragon painting. That one's a 6-footer and a little intimidating. And that's the biggest painting I've ever tried to tackle. Still working on it, but far and few between, unfortunately. Alright, so I'm liking a lot of the shapes that are going on, the color ranges that are going on here, but I think some of the edge work and the contour and just getting a little bit more of the volumes described in some of this area could help. So I think I'll probably ratchet down and kind of work in this area a little bit. So, smaller brush. Try to get some better transition colors here between that highlight.
And Lou, that's a gessoed masonite you're working on, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
I actually do about 3 layers of gesso, and then I sand a little bit with like a 220. I don't go all out, but it's not like super smooth. But it's a good surface. I like it. Is there people asking questions on that too? That's what you're answering?
What's that?
What are you typing?
Why do you want to know?
It's just all I hear is like click, 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 click.
No, just answering questions about the online program. And
Oh,
things like
okay.
that. Questions that don't necessarily pertain to the dragon and whatnot.
Gotcha. Yeah, I totally needed that. Get that nose off of that wing a bit. And then some transition color here. Once I bring it up to this phase, this is where I kind of like to, it's usually real subtle movements and things, because I try to take like every little square inch of the painting and decide, what can be improved about it. And because my initial lay-in is kind of an impression of what it might look like in the end, but there's still a lot of fine details that I'm just not thinking about at that phase, that I need to get back in and kind of figure out a little bit more. Just spend a little bit more time with the painting.
What painting mediums do you generally use, if any?
I mainly just use linseed oil, and then I'll use liquid at times too. Usually in the beginning of the painting, just to kind of get some of the initial layers to dry quicker, so I can get to painting. It helps the speed of the, with these deadlines so tight. Oftentimes you need to find ways to speed up the process. So that's liquid helps me there. Those edges maybe a little too sharp everywhere.
When you're working in in layers like that, when you have a more dry layer underneath, and you're trying to soften an edge like you just mentioned, how do you go about that?
You either got to repaint it, or you kind of treat it like a glaze. Like I put that first color down, and then what I can do is clean off the brush, and I can just feather out that edge. So I want to clean up the brush and just pretty much have a dry brush. And then what I'll do is I'll take that and I'll just kind of feather into the form a little bit, and then you kind of get that edge softer. Or you just totally repaint the whole section there, but that's not always conducive to a tight deadline. You gotta oftentimes find ways to speed up things, speed up some of the process. Oh, that's a bad tangent right there. Look at that. So let's do this. I'm gonna bring it out. Long dragon tongues are always kind of cool. I could either overlap it, or I could expand that gap between the tongue. And I felt the tongue was already a little small anyway, so let's just bring it out and try to get some of that translucent look to it. Yeah, it'd be a good call. And this is the kind of the fun, another part of the fun part. This process is going in and just thinking, spending some time and thinking about those kind of things. How would light react to this, and how would the form, what kind of planes would show in that form? What kind of texture is that particular thing that I'm painting? And if I don't know, then I go and get reference for it. If I don't know how to paint it, I go and get reference, and hopefully that works. And sometimes if I think I know how to paint it, even then I'll go and get reference, because oftentimes what you remember about maybe painting it before, or what you saw is a little different.
So here's a good question pertaining kind of to the industry right now. Tommy asks, he says, "Hey Lucas, how does painting traditionally affect getting hired for jobs, especially when competing with the speed of digital painters?"
That is a good question. It's a common one, and if you're good with paint, there's not that much of a speed difference. Most of the digital painters I know will spend a couple weeks on a painting, maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks on a painting. That's about what I spend on my traditional stuff too. I think where digital really excels in speed is the fact that if there's revisions or if there's big changes that need to be made, it's very easy to do that digitally. In oil, it oftentimes means repainting a whole other area. That's why you try to be as upfront and clear with the art director along every part of the process as possible, so that way they know what to expect in the end, and there's not a whole lot of changes. But for me, I started out as a digital artist. Actually, my very first World of Warcraft card was a digital painting, and ever since then everything's been traditional. But my very first one, and I just love painting. I love moving paint around. I love being at the easel. I love being able to put my finger through something and move it exactly how I want to move it. There's just something kind of romantic about it, and also just the aftermarket is huge. Especially with magic right now. Magic art, original art. There's so few of us doing it, and the demand for it's pretty high. So collectors are really going for that stuff, and that's great. It's great for the traditional artist. So there's that part of it too. But there's plenty of, I'm not knocking digital art in any way, and I love, some of my favorite artists are digital artists, and but for me, I love the traditional side of it. I don't know, there's something about it.
So part of that kind of package deal when you're working traditionally is photographing your pieces. Mm-hmm. We have a couple questions here regarding that. Do you use any specific equipment when photographing your pieces? Polarizing lenses, polarizing lights, etc.
Yeah. I've got that Calumet light system. It's like a professional quality lighting system where I can control a lot of the output on the lights, and I use a 55 millimeter lens with a Canon It's like my 60D. It's a little outdated, but it's good enough, and it gets good quality pictures. I always shoot in RAW, and then I transfer it digitally. I transfer it into Photoshop, and then make any kind of adjustments I need to make there, and then send it off. And I've gotten to the point where I can get my digital files about, the pictures I get about 98% to the original. It's like pretty darn close. It'd be really hard pressed to find a difference looking at the two. But yeah, you do have to invest a little bit in that, a lot of companies will let you ship the painting to them as well, and they'll shoot it for you. But I don't like being apart from my paintings, and FedEx and UPS can oftentimes do some pretty bad stuff to your packages, so I try not to ship that kind of stuff if I don't have to. I do use a polarizing filter as well, sometimes. Usually I feel like if I've varnished, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll spray varnish a painting after it's been dry and I'm ready to shoot it, because it'll bring back all of my darks and all of my colors. And then sometimes you'll get some of that noise, that real like highlights on everything. So if I use a polarizing filter, it'll help minimize that.
So what was the name of the setup the professional setup you mentioned?
Calumet lighting. It's like a professional lighting kit. Super expensive. I mean, like I said, it's an investment. I don't remember what mine cost, but it was ridiculous. It was probably a couple grand. But it's one of those things that I thought the level of professionalism I wanted out of my work, and
Train. It's everybody's best friend, the train.
So yeah, I just decided to invest in those early on, and I'm happy I did. They take up a lot of room in the garage, unfortunately, but you get the quality you need. For me at this point, it's just little tiny things that I just didn't pick up on my first pass. It's kind of like a block of clay. I started with the big shapes, and I'm whittling away more and more until I get that little bit of detail I want. Those little things that maybe I didn't think of. Oops, it's too light.
Hey Lou, so do you have any advice on how many hours a day a student should maybe study?
It's different for everyone. You should definitely be doing a lot. I mean, that's especially if you're not working and this is like your school time. This is like your college. You should definitely be doing, quite a bit. But it's just different for everyone. Some people have jobs. Some people have other, life issues that they have to deal with. So, you do what's realistic for you. The more you study, obviously, the better and faster you'll get. The faster and better you'll get. But, it's I don't know, there's not really a specific hours, I would say. As much as you can, I guess. So things like different students will pick up the information faster than others, slower than others, and it's hard to say, how good you'll be in 2 years or 4 years or 10 years. A lot of it has to do with your work ethic, how much work you put into it. A lot of it has to do with your natural ability, and a lot of it has to do with the kind of education you're getting, how fast that can help speed it along. At the Atelier, it's a very strong curriculum, and students are getting so good so fast, and it's kind of ridiculous. When I was a student, it would take probably twice as long to get where a lot of students are getting today. It's just that everything's been streamlined. We've all evolved and made it so much stronger. I think it's a real good curriculum now. It was good then, but it's faster now, and it's a good school. I mean, yes, I am biased, of course, but it's where I got my training, and it's allowing me to do what I do.
So do you think any of that that kind of acceleration of student growth that you're talking about has to do with the student base at the school as well, kind of pushing themselves, like pushing each other?
That's a good assessment. I think it's a good observation, because the school went through a little bit of a lull during the recession, and now it's kind of getting the numbers that we used to have, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and it's cool to see these kind of this camaraderie again. There's enough students around, and people are hanging out, and it's just such a cool thing to see again. When I was a student, I think you too, Tom, we kind of came in somewhat similar. I was a little bit before you, but we still had there was groups of people. We'd hang out, we'd go to coffee shops, and we didn't see that for a while. There wasn't a lot of that going on, and then I don't know, maybe it's just the numbers. It's just added to the probability there, but it's awesome. It's really cool to see. You see the same thing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kind of like what you mentioned. When I first started going to the Atelier, it's pretty much exactly what you described. There were a lot of groups of students who would go out and do things. Like everybody would get together for a sketch night or something like that, or go drawing at a coffee shop, or we'd have reference photo shooting nights over at people's houses. We'd all dress up in armor and just basically would look like Halloween in the middle of the summer, as we all pose and shoot photos of each other and all. But yeah, no, it died off for a little bit, like you said, during those kind of slower periods. But now it's really kind of come back around, almost even more so than it was before. It's really kind of cool seeing the groups of students forming their own little study groups and their own little traditions outside of class hours.
Right, and you know what else is cool too is that we're getting a lot more people from abroad.
Yeah, a ton. Yeah.
We never had that before.
I think a lot of that comes from the online program.
Absolutely,
too.
yeah.
Yep. I've had a lot of people in the mentorship program come over after studying with you or Eric.
Yep.
Then coming over here and studying for a term or two over here before going back, and then sometimes coming out again to study with us.
Yeah, we've had several repeat students. Yeah, it's really neat to see that. Kind of makes me miss those glory days that were really, really fun. I went back when I was a student. It was just a good time.
Mm-hmm. I think one of your classes actually. I think the very first class I ever took at the
That's
Atelier.
right. I remember that concept class or something. Huh?
Yep.
That's awesome. I was probably spouting out all this animal stuff. You're like, no.
It was actually an environment concepting class.
Oh, it was environment? Okay.
Yep.
Dang, I think that was one of the first classes I ever taught, too.
And a portrait pick-out class, too, I think that same term.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Back in my day.
Back in my day.
How you doing, Bills?
Good, everything's going good.
Cool, man.
I was never able to get the microphones to work properly, so we just have to settle for the camera audio for right now. But
That's cool. So it seems to be working.
All right, favorite dragon design of all time.
Of all time?
All time.
Oh, man.
From the beginning of time to
In the
now.
beginning of time. I might be, I don't know. I grew up watching Dragon Slayer. Love that dragon. That was cool.
For Mithrix.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Of course you know the name. Nerd.
Says the guy who's painting a dragon right now.
Man. That's crazy. Smog was really cool. I really dig the ones from Reign of Fire. Yeah, I like those kind of gritty dinosaur-like ones. You know, those are always fun. Toothless is awesome.
Those really gritty ones. Toothless.
Toothless. I love, man. That's that movie's in my
It's a
top
great
10,
movie.
dude. Love it.
Yeah, great movie all around.
Mm-hmm.
Design, soundtrack, everything.
Yeah. The second one was really good too. Hoping the third one's gonna be good.
They're doing the third one?
Yeah, I think they're supposed to be a trilogy. I mean, maybe they say that about every movie, but what I heard, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Those movies make so much money.
Yeah, that's true.
Seen some cool stuff online. You know, some different artists that do some pretty kick-ass dragon work. Chris Ron always does kick-ass dragons.
Yes, he does.
There's I think his name's gosh, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's Fengu Sa? Some kid from over in like Taiwan or something who's just absolutely killing it.
You do that one with the like the big white dragons crawling over the rocks.
Exactly
in
what
the
he
river?
was picturing, yes.
Yep.
God,
Yep.
That-
like the
that
crazy
piece,
rain
man.
coming through the trees.
unbelievable. They're like bright white and this
Uh-huh.
dark, oh jeez. That painting right there is like, holy
That's
smokes.
awesome.
I like that one design of that dragon that was in the second How to Train Your Dragon movie. The one that his mom rode had like two sets of wings.
Oh, that was awesome.
It's like that was
Like the flatter face.
yeah,
Yeah.
that guy was cool.
It's always a tough design to pull off, like the multiple wing design.
Yeah.
When you see it pulled off well, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like the Thunderbird in the Fantastic Beasts movie. Like another one that was really well done.
Yeah, I've
Multiple
seen
wings
that.
and all.
We were gonna go watch that. Lisa and I were trying to go watch it. We asked Avery because that's like the only way we can do it. Showed her the trailer. Hey, do you want to go see this? Showed it to her. She's like, nah. I'm like, oh man, come on. Tom said it was good.
She's like, what does Tom know?
Just trying to get a little more depth out of this area. It's a little convoluted, so try to figure out a way to make it read better.
So in addition to the overall lighting of the dragon, Lucas, and the values of the dragon against the background, that dark ship against that lighter background, are you also keeping things in mind like say the temperature of the dragon compared to the temperature of the background to kind of get to pop on two different levels?
A little bit of that. I tend to try to unify them a little bit more. I could get it to pop, but the value is doing that well enough. As far as like maybe going like very cool in the background and warm on the dragon. He's so dark and the background's so light that I really have no issue with him popping off the ground there. But that you're right. That is something I could do is temperature shifts. But I'm mainly trying to unify him. I'm trying to push some of the colors I have out here up into him and vice versa. So there's a little bit more of a unification there. That's just something I like personally. I like something that's a little bit more earth tone, not so overly garish. That's just my own personal taste and something I try to achieve in my own work.
So are there any classical or golden age illustration painters that you look to or keep in mind even while you're painting something like this, like a dragon?
Totally, yeah. I mean, I'm always thinking about like, Frazetta's always an obvious. He's definitely one of the golden age guys. He was awesome. Jeff Jones, I like his work a lot. Mainly, I like his composition, his storytelling and mood is what I was really attracted in his work. Let's see. The classics, man. Edwin Austin Abbey's one of my favorites. I like a lot of the Orientalist painters, like Edwin Long was awesome. Waterhouse. Yeah, there's a bunch. There's so many. It's ridiculous. They're hard to find. I mean, it's just crazy how many there are, and you'll find a new one, or like maybe half a dozen every year. You'll find a new half dozen artists, and it's insane. All right, I'm gonna take a little break. We can do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Totally. All right, we'll be back in 10 minutes or so. Thanks. Okay, go ahead.
All right, welcome back. Keep pecking away at this guy. I get a little more information in this area. I kind of like the quality it has as far as kind of like a darker, graphic shape there, but I think it needs a little bit more.
So we got a good question that came in during the break.
Mm-hmm.
What was your personal goal before attending the Atelier, and the career that you kind of had in mind, and how has that evolved? And are your goals kind of aligned to what they originally were, or have they changed?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think when I first came to the school, I was doing what was I doing? I don't know if I think I was at Legoland at the time doing caricatures.
You were, I remember.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah.
And that was a fun thing. I never knew really I just didn't research. I just knew I liked to draw and I was pretty good at it. But I never even thought about really going to an art school. But Watts happened to be in my backyard. It was like the next city over. So, and one of the guys I worked with at Legoland, he was taking classes, so he recommended, showed it, and then I just went and checked out the school. So when it was in Del Mar, and then I never pulled the plug. It took me another year or so to really, sign up for a class. But then once I did, it was just downhill from there. Just kept taking classes. I think after about a year, I got a job at Sony doing concept design and visual development, storyboarding, things like that. And it allowed me to continue to take classes. I could continue to pay and afford to do it. So I kind of learned that concept really wasn't my bag. And so I started focusing my skills more toward illustration, which I thought would be kind of the next venue for me. So, and it worked out. I think it's much more my temperament, and I like it.
Here's a question kind of for both of us. Question for Lucas and Tom. How often or do you spend time browsing art on the internet and keeping up with the art communities? And how often do you take breaks from doing that? And why and how does that help you?
That was a good question. You want to go first?
You just want time to think about your answer. I see what you're doing there. Yeah, sure, I'll go first. Actually, I don't keep up as often as I used to in a lot of those communities. When I first started at the Atelier, I used to keep up a lot with conceptart.org and stuff like that. But lately, kind of now that I've been doing more professional work and going to conventions and shows and stuff, that's kind of the way that I keep up with the community is by going to conventions, by going to shows, critique groups. I'm in a great critique group. Lucas is in there too. That's kind of a great way to kind of keep up with what's going on in the community and kind of talk about new faces. So it's, artists kind of talking about artists and who's doing what. So we kind of keep a beat on it, or I keep a beat on it through that. We got a pretty, busy personal life and all, so I don't have as much time to kind of poke around and discover new communities as I'd like to. But, kind of keeping up with other artists is sort of my way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very similar in my aspect. Is I don't go online and hunt for them a lot. There's a few different people I'll follow that usually will post up new artists, and people that they find. That I'll kind of use their sites or just follow them on Instagram or something. But and then for me professionally, I think I got for a while there. I was getting too caught up in what other artists were doing. And I liked what they were doing. I was trying to copy what they were doing, and I started losing a little bit of my own self. So I don't do it quite as much as I used to. Nowadays it's more like maybe back then I was using it more for, well, how did that artist do that? I'm going to copy that so I know how to do it as well. But nowadays it's more just for pure inspiration. Like, oh man, that is awesome. But I don't know. I think it started affecting me a little bit too much, so I started backing off from that kind of thing, and not being too worried about what the artists are doing, because it's kind of like one of those things where it's like I don't know, you always want what someone else has, you know, kind of thing. And that was really getting on me, and it was affecting my work because my work started kind of getting jumbled, and I didn't really have a focus, and I don't know.
It's too many. It's like the too many cooks in the kitchen type deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you can't find your voice because you're trying to borrow the voice from somebody else.
Right. That's exactly right. So it's a fine line to walk, I think. Good for inspiration, you know, and you know, it's humbling to see what a lot of these other guys are doing. These artists are just so good and so young. It's like, man. It's a pretty big ear hole. I think I might shrink it.
That train is good. Yeah, it's a freight.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna go for a
Yeah,
while.
it's gonna go for a bit. The guest of honor is here. Somebody said the guest of honor is here.
Who gets the honor?
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So they know.
Our
They know
mascot.
yeah. Gosh.
So Raphael has a question. How long does it generally take you to finish a painting like this one?
Is that Raphael from Brazil?
Maybe.
Let's see here. This one, I don't know. It depends. Some are more trouble than others. You know, you have to fight them for a while before they submit. But I don't know. If I could guess, maybe 20 hours, 30 hours, I could probably finish this. Maybe less if things are going real well.
It is Raphael from Brazil.
Cool, man. Thank you for joining us, man. He came out to the school, I don't know, a few years ago.
Oh, cool. That must have been during my little
Well,
when I was stuck in the Midwest.
oh yeah. This here is being a little too repetitive, so I'm going to break that up a little bit. So the thing is, when I take those breaks, they're important because I want to get away from the painting for a little bit and come back to it with honest eyes, and it's just easier to see any kind of mistakes I might have if I'm away from the painting. And this was one of the things I noticed. It's just a little too even. I'll make some longer, some wider. Just kind of break it up a little bit. I imagine these would actually probably get closer together since this part of the form is starting to roll and become more straight on to us. So maybe these shapes get a little closer. idea of them being a little bit more kind of like a, I don't know, you think of like the Komodo dragons or the iguanas, they got this kind of loose skin and kind of gross stuff hanging off, and that could be kind of cool to add into this a little bit.
So here's a question from Jonathan. Lucas, how much do you get to set the style of your dragons these days versus the established IP look for some of your clients?
You know, most of my work now is done with magic. I don't have a whole lot of time to do much else. And they're such a good client that I kind of just kept them exclusively for now. They're giving me enough work that I can afford to do it, alongside teaching and stuff. But they've been, they give you a loose sketch, a loose style guide that says, this is kind of what our dragons are looking like. But there's also enough leeway where they're like, we just want it to kind of have the same shape language for the particular set that we're working on. And then you can kind of deviate and just make it look cool, And oftentimes the style guides are pretty quick doodles, little sketches. Some of them are nice. Some of them, they do get some nice paintings in there, but a lot of them are quick sketches that kind of just establish, the shape language. So sometimes it's more lenient than others, more free range than others, but other times it can be a little bit more specific.
So do you use digital for concepting or for figuring out your thumbnails before you move to traditional paints at all?
Yes, I do. And that's relatively recent. I think I've been doing that like maybe the last, I don't know, year and a half, or maybe about a year and a half. Maybe 2. But yes, it speeds up the process a lot. And I was doing a lot of traveling over the last couple of years. So I was able to do that kind of work on the job. Or while I was traveling, I was able to kind of still work. I just brought my my companion, Wacom companion, with me, and I just did work in the hotel and in the airport and airplanes and stuff. When I was kind of sitting around not doing events. So that was kind of cool to add that part of the process, and it's kind of easy. It's easy to fix things, and if you need something a little bit bigger, you just transform. It's super easy, lasso and transform. But I like it, and I can send quick color comps. It's easy to manipulate and get that initial sketch approved, and then once that's approved, then I start shooting reference, and then I'll usually do a drawing. Even a lot of the drawings have been digital. Even what I'll do is just, if it's approved, I just throw up a layer on top of it, and then start to figure out the drawing either by finding my reference online, shooting, use that to kind of fill in the gaps, and then I project it, and I paint away.
So do you use you're using a mahl stick now, do you use a mahl stick early on in the painting as well, or do you stick to using it at these later phases?
Mainly in the later phases. Yeah, my initial phase, where I just kind of usually I'll wash in the painting, where it's mostly local colors and values. That I do. I don't use a mahl stick for that very much, if I do at all. And then once I start kind of getting into the details, where I just need a little bit more of a steady hand, that's when I use the mahl stick. But most of the painting, I'm using the mahl stick.
Victoria has a question. She says, "Hey Lucas, how do
Hey,
you study? How do you study animal anatomy?"
That's a good question. Ask Tom. No, I definitely do ask Tom sometimes. There'll be certain things I
You
don't know.
actually do, yeah.
But I asked you something the other day about. Oh, well, we can't talk about that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
I do get texts from you though.
yeah, you'll get texts, and I'll have certain animal questions for him. But anyway, yeah, I also have Elliot Goldfinger's book. Love his animal anatomy book. It's really good. And then there's another one. What is that one? The yellow cover by Hot.
I know the one you're talking about.
Which one is
It's
it?
like kind of like the beige color cover to it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah. It's not Ernest Watson. That's perspective one, huh?
No, it's a similar similar layout and everything though.
Yeah, I think so.
It's soft cover and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that one's a good one. Weatherly's Guide to Drawing Animals is great. It's a good one to get kind of the basic forms down. That's another one I recommend. And then looking at Tara Whitlatch's work, she has some really great animal drawing books out there. The Science of Creature Design is a great one. She goes into the musculature of a bunch of extinct and living animals.
Bob Kuhn's great, man. I like his.
Bob Kuhn's awesome, yeah.
He's a fine artist, but man, he gets so much energy.
Yep.
So what? How does he do that? Is it invention? There's an invention in that?
Kuhn?
Yeah.
Invention. Well, somewhat invention. He was like a hunter too.
Oh,
So
right.
he would go out and observe stuff in the field and everything as well. So lots of observation.
That's awesome.
He was great at doing that balancing act, like getting the features to look right to the animal type, but also playing back the features that people might find jarring if he was to be like 100% accurate to them. You know, like the paws on a lynx. You know, they have these giant like snowshoe paws, and if you were to paint them exactly how, like in proportion to what you'd see in real life, in a painting, somebody may find that to be offsetting and bizarre. But he toned it down just enough to make it look. He designed it down a little bit to make it look a little more elegant, but also stay true to the creature type. So he was great at that.
That's cool.
Sort of push and pull.
The temperature shift is a little bit. There's a little too much of that similar purple all the way down there.
So here's a good one. Do you hire models for your paintings, and how do you approach characters with complex costumes and armor?
That is a good question. Most of the time, I just shoot myself or my wife. She's most of my elves. I'm most everything else. And then I have a small collection of costumes. You know, like a leather armor thing, and then some steel. I have like a breastplate and some helmets and some weapons and things like that. But sometimes I'll use students from the school as well. A lot of the students at the school, some of them fit the look I might need for a particular painting, and most of them are more than willing to help out. Every once in a while, I'll pay a model to model for me. You know, if there's something specific that I really need to get that I can't get myself, out of myself or my wife or some of the students, then I will hire a model. But most of the time, I can get close enough, and I can kind of fill in the gaps, just using imagination and educated guesses, on certain things. That's why drawing from life is so important. It's a way to kind of memorize the things you'll see in nature, and then be able to apply it later on when your photo reference isn't going to work. You have to be able to manipulate that, and especially as a fantasy illustrator, you got to be able to change things and make it work for your painting, even though that might not be what you have in your reference.
It's an interesting question that you can kind of use to kind of touch on continued study. How long has it been since you took your last lesson at the Atelier as a student?
Oh man, that's a good question. It's not really by choice. I would probably take more and just to be in the class and getting the training. But my schedule is so full with work and raising my daughter and just home life. I haven't had time to really do much class stuff. I think I snuck into one of Bob's class, just one. One day I got to sneak into one of Bob's classes last term, but that was the first time in years, and it's unfortunate. But I think most of my study, if you will, comes now from teaching, and it's a good form. I think it's nice. Honestly, I wish I did have time to just sit and do some more portrait work and things like that. And I might have to start scheduling more of that too. It'd just be a little bit more, a lot of time for it, because you can't rest on your laurels. You gotta get in and keep training. But yeah, it's been a long time. I've been with the school for 14 years now, I think, and I started teaching 4 years after I started, and so I've been teaching about 10 years now. All of us at the school have been. There's some new teachers coming up, but we've been teaching. I think most of us the first generation, or well, I shouldn't say first generation because there was people before me, but in my time, Eric was already teaching and Ben was teaching, or he was, I think, a advanced student at the time when I came in, and then Meadow was teaching a little bit before I was, I think. Anyway, yeah, it's been a while.
So back when you first started at the Atelier, or even like when you were studying pretty seriously at the Atelier, which artist did you refer to the most initially? Who did you start to look at and consider your bigger influences to your art and style?
Well, I always liked, like I mentioned, Frazetta. I always go back to Frazetta. He was the king, and everyone knows that, so we won't argue that at all. But I like. I always looked at artists like Justin Sweet, John Foster, Donato Giancola. Guy, those are probably some of my biggest, influences, and people. Phil Hale. There's so many. There's so many. But I'd say those guys were probably some of the people I was trying to shape a lot of my look off of in the beginning. But I don't know. Some fine artists too. There was a lot of good fine artists. I was watching, like me and C2 and Morgan Weisling. Those guys they're amazing. Zia Slang. Those are artists that I definitely, and even still today, I keep an eye on what they're doing. But there's a lot.
So on that same note, we've got a question here that says your snow Viking piece reminds me a lot of a painting by Frazetta and has that kind of Frazetta style. Do you pick up certain elements from artists like that and kind of try and incorporate that into your own work, kind of like a tip of the hat?
Totally. And in fact, there is a tip of the hat too for that in that painting. The tip of the guy's sword and the blood on it is the exact same shape that Frazetta used on his.
That's awesome.
And it was my little nod to him. He was such a big influence and still is. I think he is for a lot of artists still. So it's cool. It's cool that someone like that at that time had that much impact on people. Even now, still today, it's just incredible. It goes to show how much skill the guy had, and it's pretty incredible. I was fortunate to get out to his museum. I didn't get to meet him. I met his wife before she passed away, and I met his grandson, but he was ailing and he was in the house. Which is very frustrating, you know. It's like, oh man, I'm sorry you're ailing. I really wanted to meet him, but I know Jeff got to meet him a couple times and had some fun. He's got some fun stories about Frazetta. Obviously, a Viking in the snow. Any illustrator is going to tell you, oh yeah, Frazetta. And when I got the assignment, I think probably my brain went straight to that, and it was kind of fun. Fun little piece. I always enjoyed his style of Viking type characters too. You know, I always liked that kind of barbarian type, and I don't know, kind of fun. I want to get a shelf of these. You know, it's all very similar through here as far as the value range. If you squint down, it kind of just all blends together. But if I get some shelves to kind of pop in certain areas here, some lighter values, I think it can create a little bit more depth there. Maybe one there. Maybe we'll pick up another one here. There, I kind of started to do that.
So with as much client work as you do you have time to work on many personal projects?
No, not a lot. Right now, I finished up all my recent stuff for Magic, so just through this Christmas break, I've been trying to catch up on a few of them. There's a couple of them that I've been trying to finish up or go back in and make adjustments. I'm hoping this one. I'm hoping I can finish this one. I've got that big dragon painting that's just killing me. I gotta get back on that thing. And I'm actually working on the one for the course that's being released next week, the illustration course. I'm trying to finish up that one. And then a few other ones, I guess. There's always something on the burn. And I have some ideas for later on of some my own deal, my own IP, but it's in its infancy and nowhere near even. I probably even shouldn't be talking about it yet.
It's a cool infancy, though.
Yeah, we'll see. Just feel a little bit more dimensional now. A little more love to them, but it's getting better. I guess we need to drop back some of that darker value. They're getting almost, this is like black. I gotta save that black. I don't want it, I don't know if I want it on him. I shouldn't say black, but like the darkest value I've got. I'd say that maybe the darkest value I want on him is going to be like a 9, assuming 10's black. And then I'll push my 10s in the foreground, maybe a little bit in his hand or something.
There's a question regarding training in school. What kind of educational qualifications do companies like Pixar, LucasArts, etc. expect from a person given the current scenario where everyone is working towards getting a degree?
Oh man. Read the question again. They want to know what the.
So what are the expectations essentially for like the larger studios?
So what kind of skills you need to.
What kind of skills? Yeah. Are they looking for degrees? Or are they looking more towards the quality of your work? Well, you worked at Sony for a bit.
Yeah.
You can talk about your experience there for a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not saying don't go out and get a degree by any means, because it's always good, but you don't. As far as working in the industry, you don't need one. That's not really what a studio looks for, because there's plenty of people out there with degrees who can't draw, and there's plenty of people out there who don't have degrees that can draw very well. And that's probably most of the people in the industry. They want skill. They want people who can draw well. They want to know that you have the fundamentals of perspective, composition, mood, and storytelling, and anatomy, and being able to draw people and hands and clothing. I mean, just a well-rounded artist. So yeah, I really don't know a degree. I don't have a degree. I did very little school before I kind of figured that drawing was gonna be my thing. So I just stuck with the Atelier, and fortunately it was a great school, and it gave me the skills I needed, and I took advantage and worked my butt off, and now I'm able to kind of more or less get a job where I could shift my portfolio towards where I want it to go. I love painting dragons. I love doing fantasy art, illustrative fantasy art, and it just works out so well. Magic is a perfect client for me. Their style tailors very much towards what I like to do. So, it's a good fit. I think it's a good match. Some artists might have a style that fits better with something like Blizzard, where it's much more stylized, and they might have better luck there. So it really, you gotta paint and apply your work to your temperament. What is your natural inclination? Are you more cartoony by nature? Are you more realistic? What is it you like to do? Do you like to do lots of cool ideas that aren't finished, or do you like to do one cool idea that's finished, one illustration that's finished? Because that'll be the difference between pursuing illustration or concept design, visual development. But you gotta be good. You gotta be good, but you also have to be cool. Gotta be, be easy to work with. They don't want people coming in with attitudes, and if you don't work well with a team, then you're probably not going to last long. It's a very cutthroat industry. There's so many good people looking for the same job that you are, and probably have a lot more skill, which is unfortunate. But sometimes you just need to get that lucky job. Like when I got a job at Sony, there's no way I shouldn't have been hired there, but I impressed the director, and we had some things in common, and he liked my attitude, so he gave me a shot. This was my first job at a studio like that, and I got very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time, and it worked out. I learned a lot on the job, and continued to study on the side. So, yeah, but everyone's path's different too. So I can't say what worked for me is going to work for anyone else. But that's just my my story.
So Gabriel asks, when you've reached a mental barrier, whether with your studies or work, what do you find tends to be a good method for breaking through that barrier? Going to the zoo, museum, reading, etc.
Yeah, I mean, all that's great. Going for a walk, hiking, going to a book and looking at some of your favorite artists. Just getting away, watching a movie. Something that can help re-inspire you. But yeah, that happens, and unfortunately, it happens in like some of the most crucial times. When the deadline's tomorrow, it's like, oh, great.
It's almost like the only time it really happens.
That's true. And I
put that pressure on yourself.
That's the thing, is I think it's a pressure that it just works your whole body, and you just don't know, you're just stuck. But you just have to keep putting the paintbrush to the canvas and keep moving it around. It's a job. In the end, it's a job. Someone's counting on you to finish that. If you don't finish it, there's another artist right behind you waiting to take your spot. So if that is not enough incentive, then take that. It's very competitive, and it's very tough. And each year, there's a dozen more artists that come up that are phenomenal, that are painting a lot better than you, and it's inspiring and frustrating and humbling. But I think it's what makes the world go round. Really, I mean, it makes you want to move and get better, and or it crushes you and you just fold up and go away. But hopefully not. Hopefully you can keep pursuing and competing. But I had a rough patch for a while, and it was just I didn't have enough time to paint, and I was kind of I wasn't painting as well as I should have been, and the art directors knew it, the people I was working with knew it, and I was like, kind of just I needed a jolt, really, and it took a few instances where I wasn't getting work, and just kind of kicking the butt, so I started stepping up. When I did get the work, I made sure I put the extra time in, and I tried to show, look, I've still got it. I gotta just, need a little bit of a break here, and then I can get back to it. But and the second chances don't happen a whole lot. So I took that as my second chance, and now I'm trying to step it up, and I think I'm painting better now than I have in a while, and my range has gotten bigger, but I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'm going to keep fighting and keep pursuing and keep trying to do better, because you really have to survive in this industry. It's just getting more and more saturated. But anyway. It's coming along pretty cool. Just keep plugging away. I'll take a break here in a second. knock those back again. It's just a back and forth process for me. Put something in, take it out, put it back in, redo it, reshape it. I kind of like that organic way of working because I feel like you get a little bit more of a fresh feel to the painting, or it works for me that way anyways. It doesn't feel as contrived and labored over. It's a little bit more freeform, and I think it just feels more natural that way. But what works for me doesn't always work for everyone else either. So that's the other thing. You just gotta get the experience under your belt, be able to. Nothing beats just the mileage, putting in the time and experimenting, making a bunch of mistakes, and then learning from those mistakes, and being able to hopefully compound that information and keep getting better. After a while, you kind of know what to expect from the medium, from the way you push the brush, your dexterity. So then it's a little bit more. You can have more fun with the experimenting on the something else, the colors, the composition, your storytelling. All right, I'm gonna take a little break. I'll be back in a sec. right, welcome back. So I stepped back, and you probably have all been seeing this and cringing, but I noticed that when I painted the tongue, it totally looked like he was licking his wing. So I am going to move it. Do I want to know? I have to try and play around with the shapes here of the tongue. I'm not really sure how, because it was just so much of a tangent right along the edge there, and it created that really weird looking wing licker thingy.
So we got a question from Anthony. Lucas, do you still train in gouache, charcoal, ballpoint pen, etc. These days, or do you mostly just stick to oil?
I do gouache in my sketchbook every once in a while. If I'm doing if I'm traveling around a little somewhere, it's very easy to travel with gouache. So I will bring gouache. Like when I went to New Zealand, it was super easy to travel with that, and I got to do some plein air and gouache. I probably wouldn't have been able to travel with my oils with all the other stuff I had. So I do work in gouache, mainly sketchbook stuff, or if I'm teaching a class. The charcoal stuff, same thing as if I'm teaching a class. I will also do for the mentorships. I've got about 5 students that I'm mentoring right now, and I will do charcoal work for them every once in a while. But other than that, it's mostly just sketches, and then digital sketches, and then oil paint.
Would you say that that teaching helps kind of keep your hand up in those other disciplines as well?
It does, but it's not enough. I really should be in class more, but it definitely does. Teaching is wonderful that way, but you also need time to kind of focus on your own thing, and kind of explore. But it's just after a while you kind of got to move on. Unfortunately, you gotta go out and get a job and feed the family and stuff. So you can't always be in class. But I don't know. I'm hoping to get back in someday. When things maybe stabilize a bit, and I can afford to maybe just take a little bit of time for my own education.
So here's something we touched on briefly earlier. Maybe you can go into it a little more in depth. How do you look for reference for dragons, since they don't exist? Do you look for reptile references, or do you look to other artists to see how they kind of solve the same problem?
Yeah, I do both actually. I'll definitely look at other artists. And in fact, Todd Lockwood, he's kind of the master of dragon painting. He developed a cool little guide that kind of went over some of the anatomy of dragons, if they're for one particular his version of a dragon. but that's something I would follow a little bit of. I definitely look to a lot of nature, lizards, dinosaurs, bats. The bodies of a dragon can range from cat-like to more lizard-like. So you're kind of borrowing a little bit of anatomy from a lot of different sources to try and make it as believable as possible. And then also design sense. How cool do you want to make what kind of aesthetic you want in the particular type of texture in the skin. You might go to something like a alligator. It has a very different type of texture compared to a I don't know, dinosaur, or an elephant, or you just try to fuse and borrow from nature to try and get your designs as believable as possible. Whoops. I'm trying to lighten up this wing a little bit back here. I want this to drop back if I can. Anything that gets it away from this mouth. It's just getting too close to that mouth. A little darker. Little things like softening an edge, lightening the contrast, or lowering the contrast on something, adding more of the atmosphere, the color of your atmosphere into the shapes that are further away. Try to get away from putting too many details into areas that I want to recede.
Can you talk a bit about your temperature choices with your colors? Do you have a method for where you're placing cooler colors versus warmer colors right now?
A little bit. Like I've kind of, a lot of the things that are in light are going more warm. I have a warmer light source, so got a lot of warms like up in here, back here. There's some rim lights along here. And as we get into the shadow side of things, it still goes from a relatively warm to cool within the shadows. The shadows are generally cooler than my everything in my light source, but you can also see it going from like a purple, which is cooler, up to this green to yellowish, greenish tones. So it's gradually going from a warm to cool there. Here from warm to cool. But mainly, I don't get too much into that. I probably should pay more attention to that, but a lot of it is I just kind of shift it around till it looks kind of cool. Which is a terrible way of teaching, but it's kind of, there's some truth to that. It's like I'm trying to make it look good, and there's a few things that I can do to get that. You can see out here too, this highlight along here, because it's in the shadow side, I wanted to have a cooler light source, a cooler highlight to help contrast with the warmer highlights on him. So I try to keep the range of temperatures in a certain area in shadows, and then the range of temperatures in the lights. So I'm thinking a little bit about that. kind of curving these shapes this way. I have some textural strokes going this way, but I'm trying to think of that cylinder as it's kind of moving away from us. So rounding out these shapes, it almost creates like this cross contour or topographical line that helps show off some of the form. It's a fairly easy way of getting some dimension out of your shape.
So December Sounds asks, have you ever painted Jeff slaying a dragon? Because that would be metal.
It would be. That's awesome.
You didn't answer the question.
I have not done that.
Let's get another question on dragon design aesthetics. Eric asks, he noticed that most of your dragon designs tend to favor a more traditional dragon look and style. Do you ever explore more extreme designs with your dragons, or do you kind of stay within that the kind of traditional reptilian look?
Yeah, you know, I've done maybe some, but it was mainly for a client or something like that that was a little more, a little different. The thing is with my art, I tend to be a little bit more subtle about things, not as, just not as stylized and not as like, you know, I try to make it work if I can, you know, like if this thing actually existed.
It's kind of a low fantasy.
Low fantasy, yeah, totally. I've always been attracted to that. You know, I think like growing up with movies like Conan and Dragon Slayer and those kind of movies, it built something in me that, you know, a certain kind of, I don't know, something I like, a certain aesthetic I really like about that lo-fi fantasy. To me, it makes it feel more plausible, like it could have existed, it could have happened at some point. Lord of the Rings kind of hits that in some notes. The first movie especially, was really, I mean, that was awesome. That movie was made for me, I swear. That hit every note on me. It was like, and to this day, it's my favorite movie. So, you know, a little thing, the subtlety like that, I love that stuff. 13th Warrior is another great example. There's a grittiness and a realistic feel to it. There's, I don't know. That's just my thing. I know there's a lot of people who love the anime and the crazy over-the-top design stuff, and that's great. There's a lot of fun, inspirational stuff to that, but for me, I prefer something more low fantasy.
So you have kind of a looser style of painting. What kind of makes you gravitate towards that kind of style?
You know, that's something we were just talking about before this shoot, about my work. I've always been attracted. I don't know. I'm attracted to all sorts of painting, but I love the loose feel of people like Richard Schmidt. You know, I don't know who else would be a good example. Sargent is awesome. I love that feel and the energy a lot of those paintings have. So I try to apply that to my own work. Doesn't always come across because oftentimes I find myself getting too caught up in detailing one particular area I'm having trouble with or something like that. But for the most part, I try to keep it a little bit more loose so that I don't know. The more tight and rendered you get, the more staged or posed or kind of uptight it becomes, in my opinion. So having a little bit more of a some of those looser brush strokes helps kind of feed the idea that this thing's maybe moving and that there's actually some action going on in the painting. But I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of also my own. I think I'm borderline ADD, so I kind of get bored. I'm like, let's just do that, and that's fine. But so I kind of force myself to come back and keep working on them. So I put in the time I need to be able to finish it and get to that level of detail I want to get. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully I answered the question.
So when you're doing concept work, how did that kind of personality trait of yours that kind of influences your painting to be a little bit looser? How did that influence your concept work? And did you do storyboard work before?
Yeah.
And how did that influence your storyboarding?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think when I started doing that stuff, my skill level wasn't great. I mean, I was okay, but they could have easily had an artist with 10 times better skill than me doing that work. But like I said, I was in the right place at the right time, and I don't know. I think I just at that point in my skill level, I was doing the best I could because I was in a great studio, and I figured this was my shot, so I better do a good job. But yeah, I don't know how I. That's a good question. I have to think on that one. I'm not sure.
So here's a question that's kind of off the beaten path a little bit. That one of the people in the chat's asking right now. A lot of artists, we're known for kind of being night owls and not getting a lot of sleep, and a lot of people hang their hat on that. So how many hours of sleep do you average?
Oh man, I need my 8 hours.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah. When my daughter was younger, it was probably a little less. I probably get about 7 hours of sleep a night. I can't do all-nighters, especially anymore with a daughter. It's just not fair to her, and so I started taking less work when I was kind of in that, and even now. I mean, I don't need to be up all night finishing work. I schedule the amount of work I can take, based on how much time I think I have for it. So I can't do all-nighters anymore. I think I've done maybe a couple in my lifetime, but yeah, I don't.
It's kind of a misconception that a lot of people have, that their life has to begin and end at the easel every day.
Yeah,
and have to get maybe 4 hours of sleep, then back to the easel.
Yeah,
definitely a balancing act,
It really is, yeah. And some people's style definitely tailors for that kind of. It commands that kind of attention, but for me, and the level of finish that I get, I spread it out more. I paint maybe 6 to 8 hours a day, and then that's it. Sometimes less. I mean, if there's a deadline or something that you're trying to hit and it absolutely has to be hit, yeah, you might have to do an all-nighter or something. But more often than not, if you call a director and you're not notorious for always being late, and you just say, hey, look, I just need an extra day on this. Get a good night's sleep. You'll paint better. It's much more beneficial to get a good night's sleep than to stay up all night and just work. Because for me personally, I only have about 6 good hours of paint time in me a day, and then I'm burned out after that. I need to just chill, recharge for the next day. I can maybe go a little bit longer if I have to, but my peak skill time is about 6 hours, and then it drops off pretty steep after that.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about a lot, that they aren't necessarily honest with themselves about. You have to kind of know what you're able to handle. And
Exactly.
What you're able to do in the day, and be honest with yourself about it.
Yep, exactly. And other people might be willing to sacrifice more too. You know, Rockwell's notorious for sacrificing a lot, and I just have to realize I'm not going to be Rockwell. I'm not going to try to keep up with stuff that he did, and I'm not willing to make that sacrifice. There's more important things in life than painting dragons. I love doing it, but you know, friends and family and other things that are, in my opinion, much more. They need that attention. They need to be, you know, a priority, bigger priority. So, like Tom was saying, it's a balancing act. Got to figure it out. Everyone for themselves. You know, what works for you doesn't always work for someone else, and vice versa. And I can't say that I've totally figured out the balancing act either, though, because we get rough times. You know, there's definitely some bad paintings and rush jobs, and you know, hardships on the family. So it's always a balancing act, and it doesn't always stay balanced. Train's still going crazy, huh? Pretty late here.
What you got on me, Lucas? You got 10 more minutes.
10 minutes?
Yeah. Just about between 10 and 15.
Plenty of time.
Just giving you a heads up there.
I just got to shape the brush sometimes to get the shape I want. That's what means just kind of shaping it how I need it and then getting the shape. That's a little better. Just need my dexterity to match.
Lucas, is there anything that you particularly struggle with painting? Anything that you don't look forward to painting or that you find difficult to paint?
Yes, like power sources, magic sources. For whatever reason, man, I don't know. It's just I have trouble getting. I think I've gotten better at it, but yeah, I don't look forward to painting big magical stuff like that.
The whole question of like, is the power source glowing? Is it opaque? That sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. That's always a little rough, but I don't know. I also like the challenge of that kind of stuff too, though. If I get assigned something where I've never painted it before, or it's something that's a little bit different, it can be kind of fun and challenging to figure it out. But yeah, there's a few of them that I don't know. I've done enough power sources that, and I'm still not super happy with how I do it. That I kind of dread them. So I'm fairly happy with how the head's coming out. There's some things I like, but I still think of a few things I want to go back in and work up, but it's definitely getting there. There'll be some more experimenting at home on this one. Like this thing's translucent, but there's also a highlight on this part of the surface too. So there's like a cool highlight. It's kind of a weird combo. I'll just calm down that red a little bit on the corners of that shape. Cool it off a little bit, a little darker. A little more blue in there.
Just a couple more minutes, Lou.
Okay. If there's any last questions, fire them off now. We've got 2 minutes left. Thank you guys for joining me. It's awesome, those of you who are still here. Appreciate you watching.
So how long have you studied seriously? How long have you had have you trained with kind of the right mentality, so to speak?
Probably once I started coming to Watts. I got some good training on specific courses at a local college, but 98% of my training is through Watts, and that was 14 years ago. So, and I like to think of myself as I keep learning, as I go, but it's usually in different areas. You kind of learn your techniques, or you learn your fundamentals, and then there'll be certain techniques to pick up, and different things to expect from the job and whatnot.
All right. Well, maybe we'll close out with this one last question here. What's your favorite class to teach and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know if I have one favorite one. I do like, there's some I like better than others, but I don't know. I think I just like to teach, being able to kind of share what I've learned and help other people get to that level, and see people exceed is super rewarding. I don't know, it's kind of the cliche answer, I guess. It's just kind of, I love seeing people get good and go on to do something with it. It's very rewarding, and just happy that I can help and give back a little bit. So anyway, I thank you guys for joining me. I wish you guys all happy holidays, and I look forward to hopefully meeting some of you guys someday at the school or at a show or something. But take care, and see you next time.